The Circuit Gilles Villeneuve is fast, tight, and twisty.
It's time for everyone's favourite Grand Prix.
So here are our 2023 Canadian Grand Prix predictions from the Purple Sector Podcast.
Friday, and we're going to be going through exactly what we think is going to happen this Grand Prix weekend. My name's Isa.
And I'm Yusuf.
So let's get started then. So first, the way that this works, by the way, is we have a quali 1, 2, 3 who will be on pole, who will be second and third. Race 1, 2, 3 who will be on the podium. Most impressive driver, most impressive team, and then most disappointing driver, and lastly, most disappointing team. So starting with our quali 1, 2, 3, who do you think is going to get pole position, Yusuf?
I'm going to go very run of the mill, very boring. Max Verstappen. He is inevitable. And then I'm going to cook up something very nice and interesting for P2. I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton. And then in P3, a bit boring, Sergio Perez. I think Mercedes were fast in Barcelona. They might have a good run here in Canada. It's a bit like Barcelona. It's very fast, has lots of straights. Some hard-braking corners. It's got the hairpin, obviously. I think Perez hasn't been having a very good season this year, and he really needs to pull his socks up. So I think Canada's his chance to pull his socks up, get back to where he was before, and show everybody how good he is.
Yeah, I think with Lewis, obviously Spain is the best track to tell how fast you are. You know, it's the ultimate chassis track. It's where they used to do their testing. So whoever's fast there, you know that they've got a good car. And I think Perez, he said that he's had a really poor season. I don't really think that's the case. He had a good,
a poor run.
yeah, he's had quite his form has been quite poor the last few races, but before that he's quite good. So I think this would probably be the best time for him to return to form. But to be honest, myself, I don't think that's going to happen because my qualifying predictions is that Max again will be on pole. He's just way too fast, and I think the only thing that could really bar him from getting pole is a reliability issue.
Yeah, something like that.
He's too good. The
He's
car's too fast.
He's too good for even a mistake.
Yeah, and then I've gone for P2 Fernando Alonso and P3 Lewis Hamilton. So obviously I've said the same about Lewis, and I think Alonso had a bit of a poor race in Spain, but I think they'll be back. Aston Martin will be back here in Canada, especially, and he had that P2 as well last year in qualifying around here with the Alpine. So I do think that he's quite good at this track, and yeah, we'll see how he does. All right, so then moving on to our race podium. Who have you gone for?
So top step of the podium is Max Verstappen. Again, I don't think anything's going to happen to him unless there is some sort of reliability issues. And then in P2, Sergio Perez would have made a pole position and he will have gone into P2. And then in P3, it will be George Russell. Imagine that. Because I am cooking up something for Mercedes today. I think that they're going to be very good, very fast. And I kind of hope it because I would like to see Mercedes back, see a bit of competition between Aston Martin, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Although I think Ferrari have dropped off a lot over the past year.
Yeah, I do think that Mercedes. I mean, I'm a Mercedes fan myself, so I do think that they could be back. They could be back on the podium as well as we saw in Spain. And then, yeah, I think Verstappen just too quick. So, which was why I've gone for Verstappen P1, Alonso P2, and Leclerc P3. So, I mean, obviously, normally you'd say that Leclerc is, he's the master of qualifying, brilliant qualifier. He does amazing in qualifying, but not so much in the races. We saw that last year, especially. But I do think that in this race, Ferrari maybe come back after a poor in a form. They've really been struggling, and they've been under quite a lot of pressure from just the general public about how they've been performing, especially after such a great car and a great performance last season. It's really just fallen off a cliff, you could say, this season. But I do think Leclerc podium here in Canada. So then moving on to our most impressive driver, I'll go first for this one, and I've gone for Fernando Alonso, and that reflects in my other predictions as well because I said that he would be second on the podium in the race and he'd be second in qualifying. I just think that Aston Martin, they had a really poor weekend last week in Spain, and I think for a poor week, it's not really a poor weekend if you given this to them, before the season had started, you wouldn't really say it's a poor weekend. You'd say it would be absolutely amazing for them. But I think based on how well they've done this year, where did they finish? P6 and P7.
I think so. I think Stroll. Yes, yeah, it was P6 and 7.
Yeah, P6 and 7 was it poor, but I do think they'll be back. Alonso is good around this track, and yeah, so he's my most impressive driver. Who's yours?
My most impressive driver is George Russell. So he's gonna qualify outside of the top three, but he's gonna get that last podium position, and he's gonna overtake his teammate, and he's going to be on the bottom step of the podium, and Mercedes will be back.
Pretty much exactly what he did last week in Spain, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. I'm a big Mercedes fan, so I do like to see you supporting the Mercedes boys.
I'm not a Mercedes fan. I don't know why I'm so in preference to Mercedes today.
Yeah, I don't mind. But then moving on to most impressive team, I have gone for Mercedes. And yeah, seems like we're quite favouring Mercedes today. We're really backing them to do well this weekend. And yeah, Mercedes, I think, are going to be the most impressive team. They really look like this big upgrade. The side pods of really, you know, given a big boost up. The zero pods clearly didn't work, and I think this new design is absolutely working for them, and it could really lead them to possibly fighting Red Bull towards the end of the season. And I'm hoping that, because you don't want to have the whole season Red Bull whitewash. I think at the end of the season, maybe a good fight between Mercedes and Red Bull would be great.
Yeah. So my most impressive team is also Mercedes. So to be honest, I think we read each other's minds when we were making the predictions
Yeah.
today, because we are so in favor of Mercedes. And I think if we if Mercedes don't do well, I think like half of our points would have just gone down the drain
Well,
like
I
that.
did say for the race, Verstappen, Alonso, and Leclerc. So maybe all hope isn't lost there.
Yeah, but I've gone all out Mercedes. So they better do well. They better do well. My most my most disappointing driver is Pierre Gasly. He's had a pretty good run of form. It's been okay. It's not been amazing, and I think he just won't do well. I just have a vibe. I don't really know why. So who's your most disappointing driver?
My most disappointing driver is Sergio Perez, and again, that reflects in my other predictions that I made. I didn't say that he'd be in the top three for quality or in the top three for the race either, and I just don't think that Perez can challenge for the championship anymore. There was a lot of speculation about whether he could do it, and there was a lot of excitement around it as well, but it's just disappeared, to be honest. And
Yeah.
he's on a really poor run of form, and I just think that it's all gone for Perez, and I kind of do think it's downhill from here. And of course, I don't want that. I really like Perez, and I did hope that he could fight Max this season, but unfortunately, it's just not to be. And I do think that it's not really looking great for Sergio, not just for this race, but for the whole season.
There's also been a bit of talk about how Dr. Helmut Marko could remove Perez from the team because of his bad run of form. I don't. I,
No,
I
it
I don't
wasn't that
subscribe
bad.
to that at all. I don't subscribe to that at all because still a good driver. He's still picking up points. You would kick him out maybe if you know you were a midfield team that weren't doing very well. You scramble for a couple of points every week. Then you'd kick him out, but not in this car because they Red Bull right now could win the constructors championship with one driver,
Yeah, and I
and
go on.
so you would kick out a driver if you need if you are in danger of losing places in the constructors championship. So I don't subscribe to the fact that Perez could um get fired from Red Bull at all. And I think he's pretty safe, but he does need to pull his socks up if he wants, to because this is his last year on his contract. He only had a 1 year contract, from 2022, so he has got to perform if he wants to be in Red Bull for
And
2024.
I think another thing about this whole Perez debate is also that in this top team, he has these couple of off weekends, and it's always been like that. You've always I think since began at Red Bull in 2021, He's just had these off days sometimes where he's just really not performed. But then other times he can really bring it. Sometimes he can beat Verstappen. He's got that potential. But I think just making those silly mistakes is what's
Yeah, yeah.
costing him. So I don't think that it's a matter of him getting kicked out. Um, I think he's just got to, perform a bit better because it's really not acceptable to be doing this. But I do think the Red Bull are in a really safe position. And it's not like they don't really want to employ a teammate who's going to be fighting Verstappen. They could be crashing out.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you don't want a Rosberg Hamilton. So I think this deal could be working quite well for them between Perez and Verstappen. So yeah, I don't really agree with that at all. And then moving on to our most disappointing team, our final prediction, I have gone with Ferrari. Another,
Why?
it's
Why?
just another one of those things where the form has just dipped so far, you know.
They did
And
okay
I
in
spoke about this.
Spain.
I spoke about this before though in my podium thing about how they've really dropped off from last season. And Leclerc, I did predict P3 for him, but I think that Sainz, he's been all right. He at this Spanish Grand Prix he came P2 in qualifying, brilliant from him, and he did beat Leclerc there. But I just think that it just it's really looking bad for Ferrari at the moment. It's not really working out, and they're on a poor enough form. I can't actually remember the last time they had a podium. I think it was Azerbaijan, and
Yeah, it was.
yeah, so they've really got to be improving and getting back to winning ways, hopefully. But I think at the moment they're just so far off, and yeah, they I think they're gonna have another one of those weekends where they'll be quite disappointing. So yeah, what's your most disappointing team?
I don't really know why this is my most disappointing team. But I'm going to go for Aston Martin. And that's mainly because of what happened in Spain. They didn't do very well. They came sixth and seventh. Stroll beat Alonso. And I think the race before they didn't get a podium either, did they?
No, in
M-
Spain. No, what was the race before Spain?
Monaco, I think.
Monaco. No, they did. Of course, Alonso got that
Oh
P2.
no. No. I must be
Well,
thinking of something
see,
else
I
then.
see this from the opposite angle where they've had a bit of a poor weekend in Spain, but I think that they're going to bounce back. They'll be back, especially Stroll. He had a really poor start to the season, really far behind Alonso. Despite, of course, he did have those issues with his hand, but he was really far behind Alonso. And then to come back the way that he did in Spain to beat his teammate and finish P6, I think it was, to beat Alonso. I think it was really a statement from him. So I do think that Aston Martin will be back at the top for Canada. Obviously, though, agree to disagree. We see it from different angles. But, we're just going to have to wait till Sunday to find out how it's going to go. Because we're gonna be there for the whole Grand Prix weekend this week. We've got our qualifying reaction after the race. After qualifying, and also we'll have our race reaction after the race on Sunday. So, any last thoughts before we go?
Um, I really Canada's a good circuit. It's a very fun Grand Prix, and I think we should be in for a spectacle. And that's why you should like this video and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.